Hey, I'm JD Hagler, and we're going to talk about building a hangboard today. We're going to talk about building this specific hangboard. This is what I recorded building. I was happy enough with how the first one turned out that I'm willing to show that to the world. It's been a great hangboard. I've done some sessions on it already and just been really pleased with it. So going in, what I've got here is a bunch of 3/4 inch plywood. This is like easiest grade, like roof sheathing grade, nothing crazy, just the cheapest stuff you can get. It's not a bad idea to go up a couple of grades in plywood, get a little bit nicer plywood, not so it looks better, just so it's a little bit denser, a little bit harder wood. But 3/4 inch ply works fine. I'm not worried about it at all. Then I've got a 1/4 inch ply on the very back that is what is the backer for everything, and that's all kind of glued together. As far as other materials that you're gonna need for this getting going, I've got a bunch of different screws with different lengths. These were all screwed together with the exception of this top piece here. This part is screwed on, but for the most part I try to not have any showing screws. I have a T-nut in each side for my own personal preference that I can add my own holes to. So if I want to put jugs up here or edges or pinches or whatever I want to do, I can put those here and change this out. And those are the generic supplies. When you design your own, there's a lot of ways you can do it. You can do this massive board. You know, first I was trying to figure out where you want to hang it at. So if you're going to hang it inside, go measure your door frame. Make sure you know where the studs are at before you go and cut this thing out, and then you realize you're going to have to change the studs. I measured mine out for an indoor stud length and then failed to convince my wife to let me hang it above the kitchen door. So I had to modify it for going out in my shop, and I had to add a couple more screws for a stud out there instead. It's coming inside by the kitchen door eventually, just not yet. Some guys can make them where you just hang them, have some rope or cordage going through them, and you can just hang them wherever you want them, on a tree limb or a post, I don't care, whatever. You also want to make mine as big as this one is. I've got a bunch of different layers in here, and I've got a lot of different slots. You don't have to do it quite like that. You could just do a real narrow board, or you could do just this section here. Do it twice, two blocks of these sections here, and hang them somewhere. You're going to be really simple. I've made a big complicated board, but I really just want you to apply these techniques to the board that you want. You can even take your own board and arc it kind of like a Metolius board, so it's a little more in line with your shoulder compression, but that's up to you. All I want you to have here is the tools for what you need to know about doing this, the things to avoid and the products you're going to need. As far as actual tools in order to build this thing, I've got a fairly decent library of tools. I wish I would have had a drill press. I don't have that, but most of what I use in this video is done by jigsaws. I've got 2 cordless drills. I think one would be fine, as long as you can do spade bits or regular drill bits in either one. But I've got my little Milwaukee Impact that I love dearly, and then I've got a regular DeWalt drill, nothing crazy. I've got a Dremel that I do a lot of my sanding with. I've got an actual sanding device that I do a lot of my face sanding with. I have an angle grinder that I did some of the larger chunk sanding with, but I think most of that can be done with, if you're desperate, a Dremel, but a regular sand pad or sandpaper on a block if you're super desperate. But the key tools for me, I think, are definitely my drills, my jigsaw, and my Dremel. You're going to absolutely need a spade bit. These are 7/8. You're going to need a spade bit for doing your holes. You're going to need a jigsaw to cut the slots. If you have a router, that's one way to do it, and maybe that's even a better way to do it. I don't have a router. So if you're more comfortable with a router and you are able to make these slots in here and round off the edges so it's comfortable for your fingers, by all means use a router. It'll work great. I did not personally do it, but I don't see any reason why you couldn't use that. So those are the tools I would have going in mind. I would also grab glue. Everything here is glued together after the fact. So I would have that on hand as well. So some various screw links, some glue, T-nuts if you want that, but more importantly, just really know where you're going to have it hung to begin with, and then you can go from there. So we're going to hop into making this thing, and I hope you learned something. I hope this answers some questions for you. I hope this sets up your training regimen a little bit, and some boards out there are kind of expensive. I think this can do everything you want. I do know people that have just hung slats somewhere, and that seems to work okay. That's a cheapo way of doing it, and it does okay. But I really wanted my own hangboard that I could just take with me and put wherever that my wife would let me. So hop in and see what you think. Thanks. Hey, so this is Hangboard construction. We're gonna run through the pieces I got real quick. I've got a main base plate that you can see here that covers the whole thing, and then another piece that's same width going across the top, and I got a narrow band here. That's so that I can put these little blocks here and here, and I've got these plates on the ends that I'm going to drill out for a T-nut that I can hang slopers, or maybe if I want to put a whatever hold I want, really, my two jugs or edges, whatever I want to put, I can mount there. And it's a little bit off the edges, but I'm not too worried about it. I might swing it in, keep it cleaned up, but I'm not too concerned about that. That's a pretty big hold, and I've got smaller slopers I can use too. So the measurement of this thing right now is let's see, this is a 2 1/8, this is a 4 1/4, and I believe this is like 7 inches, 7 1/2 all together. And then I've got my template where I'm going to come through. I'm going to add my, this is going to be flipped over, so there's here, and I'll come back over this way. I've got my 3-finger pocket here, 4-finger pocket here, 5-finger pocket here, and what that'll do is I'll repeat that all the way down, and 3/4 inch gap. It'll go all the way to the board. So 3/4 inch gap, 1.5 inch gap, or 1.5 inch depth, and then this will be 2 1/4. Yeah, 2 inches and a quarter depth. So I don't expect to need less than that for a while, and when that comes, I can adjust for it. So then I'm going to round out the top for some sloper holds or whatever I got going on. But that's the basics of it. I'm going to clamp it together, drill some holes, and then glue it together. Alright, you can see where we're at here. I've got all the holes drilled for the bottom 2 rows. I've got the entire top row cut, or middle row cut. I got to do the bottom row, and then I got to do the middle board middle row, and then I've still got to drill, and then I've got to cut all 3 of these. You see how it's working. This one's not too bad because it's only just this 3rd edge. I don't have to worry about matching up with the one behind it, but both these 2 are going to be kind of a pain. This one's probably where I'll spend the most time working with this board. I imagine I'll get out of this one pretty easily and then move down to this one. I may reinforce this one with another board down here, and I'm probably going to go get like a 1/4 inch plywood board and glue this whole assembly down, and make sure I've got glue running through all these seams here to really strengthen this. That way it's not just this edge here holding my weight. But for now, I'm pretty happy with this. So I've done all this with a 7/8 spade bit in my little Milwaukee Impact. I've got a regular DeWalt drill that I can do it with too, but I tend to like my Impact with a bit this big. And then I'm taking a jigsaw to flesh out these cuts. So I'm gonna do the last couple of cuts on this side here real quick. That's not too bad. So that's that bottom board, and then I got another row up here to do. So I've screwed this down to keep it steady. I'm gonna try and not screw this one down because I don't really want the bolts, the screws showing up on the top. I want to keep it as clean as possible, even though it's 3/4 inch rough plywood. But I'll screw this back down, and I'll clamp this to the top of it. I'll drill my spade bit back down to the top, separate it out again, cut the lines. I gotta drill this out for a 3/8 inch bolt, and then I'll actually drill that 3/8 inch hole all the way down through this, separate this off, remount the back side a little bit for a T-nut, and that way my threads for my T-nut are all the way at the front, and then I've got another 1.5 inches that bolt can receive back through there to secure whatever hold I want to this 3/4 inch plywood. And this will be secured. I may actually put bolt or screws on this one just to be sure, since I'll have holds on this. But other than that, so I'm almost there. I can see the light with that. So I'll cut these out real quick. All right. So I've got this middle board screwed to the back board. You can see I've got no screws showing at the moment. I've got these plates on here just to make sure I had everything sized right. My top board is clamped down all the way to the table. You see this bottom piece here is pretty chewed up. It's a little 2x4 I've got here. I've got that 2x4 on the back side of my plywood that I can drive that spade bit into, and hopefully that will prevent me chewing up the back of my plywood too bad when it's clamped down like that. It's kind of worked. It's better than just blowing the spade bit out the back side and pushing all that wood off. That back 1 or 2 layers of plywood tend to really splinter out if you push it through with as much pressure as you're applying with a spade bit. So I like to have that 2x4 backer, you know, just some scrap wood that I can drive that pressure down into and keep the back of that wood secured. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You're gonna lose a little bit of chips, especially in these little narrow bands down here, but it does a lot better with that backer than it would without it. Without it, that back half is just almost trashed. It really destroys a lot of the integrity of the board, the structural integrity specifically. So I'm gonna drive this through as best I can. I don't think this is gonna make it all the way through, but I'm gonna drive it as far as I can and then flip it over and hit it from the back side. So we'll see how this goes. This one's not over that 2x4, so I'll come back to that in a little bit. Keep this thing as lined up as much as you can. Keeping it clamped helps a little bit, but you still get these little slots that slide out. I'll be applying some filler up through those kind of gaps. Okay, I can tell by the wood change that I'm all the way through and I'm into the 2x4, so that's cool. I was afraid that all the pressure on the side of this thing was gonna really stop this impact from working, and I'd have to come back from the back side, which is fine. Either way works, as long as you can align it back up. So if this is poking out the back side of the board, that's awesome. Put it back in, drive it back up from the upside. If not, then you're gonna have to take a drill bit on a regular drill, drive it back down through, keeping it in line as much as possible to align this back up and come back through. So that's one down. I've only got 1 million more to go. Yeah, I think it's like 12 holes altogether I gotta drill, so I got 11 more to go. So this is not something I prefer to do with a battery pack, but these Milwaukee seem to work pretty well with it. So I'm gonna run through the rest of these. All right, drilled all the way through the front piece, the back, and you see some of them went all the way through, but a lot of them didn't. A couple of them got really close, you see the edges, but just didn't quite make it. So I flipped it over. Happily that point made it all the way through, otherwise I'd have to drill it out with another small bit. But you can see I haven't blown the back. There's a couple of chips, but for the most part I haven't blown the back up on this, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'll still put wood filler and all that, just so I have that surface, but pretty happy with this for the most part. So I'm gonna drill the back of these out real quick. Couple of pieces that are really there, but for the most part, pretty happy with that. All right, so now I'm gonna take this board off. Separate them out again. Sweet. Now I'm going to jigsaw those back out, and then we'll put it all back together. I still need to put a 3/8 inch through this for a T-nut, but I'll do that after I've done this part here. This is really the primary. This is just kind of bonus. Yeah, this is what I'm really working on right here. So you see some of these aren't exactly matched perfectly. I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to run some sandpaper through it and try and even it out as much as I can. I am going to go through on the surface level of each of these cuts with a Dremel and round them out. Not a lot, but enough that I don't have that sharp edges. And I'm going to sand every layer down individually before I put it all back together. I had a thought before I cut these out. There's one more step I do want to go through real quick. So doing these jigsaw parts right here really helps out a straight line instead of just eyeballing, because I've done the eyeballing before. And you can just do it this way, line it up, top of the hole to the top of the hole and mark it. I think it's faster to hit it with my 3-foot level. Now, on this base layer, I'm actually really pleased with how straight that is. That blows my mind. I really didn't expect it to be quite that straight. I got a couple of drops like this one here, but man, that's actually looks really good. I'm really happy with that. Trying to do it with a hand drill, this is something you really would want to do with a drill press because it keeps it all in line and straight back. So you have to be really careful when you're doing the drill that it doesn't move out too much. Spade bits, especially wide spade bits like this, are a little bit easier to keep straight. I don't really know why, but I assume because they're so thick, it's hard for them to get out of line because they have to exist in the hole they've already drilled. So it's really hard for it to lean into the wall too much and get twisted in that shaft because it has to fill it anyways. It's really hard for it to move back and forth. So they line up halfway decent. They're easier to work with than smaller bits for sure. But I still was a little bit concerned about it wandering back. So I'm really happy with that. But I am going to mark it real quick. Alright, so this is the back of those boards. You can see I've got a lot of chips where stuff is popped out and whatnot. I'm trying to remove some of the looser stuff, but because some of these surfaces are where I'll be hanging fingers, I want to go ahead and fill this in with some wood filler as much as I can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be okay. And then I'm going to come through and sand it all down to make it nice. So I'm not going to do anything super fancy for spreading it, really. And like a putty knife would be fine, but I think I'm just going to, since I'm sanding it down so much later, I'm just going to kind of goop it in there and go from there. Do that for the rest of these boards and let them dry tonight or today, sand it down, and then I'll glue them together. Alright, you can see this table's getting more convoluted as we go, but we're almost there. Alright, so I've sanded these down pretty decent. I'm pretty happy with them. Those stuff's all dried in there. There's a couple of spots that they're a little bit chipped up, but that's on the top. I'm not really worried about it. It's plywood. If I was really concerned about that perfection, I would have gone with like a hardwood of some sort, but for plywood, for cheap, I've got probably, maybe $15 of materials here, maybe. The plywood's not, and that would be like screws I went and bought for it. So maybe the T-nuts were part of that cost, and wood, there's not a whole lot here, and it's going to do more than what I needed to do. I did go pick up some 11/32 or 1/4 inch plywood that I'm going to cut this onto the back of and glue that on, and so that way all these will be glued down to those on the back side and a little bit more rigidity, and then it'll be a backer for that. I'm not going to hollow it, I'm not going to put a hole through it either. It's just going to be a complete backer for it. So the last step before I start gluing this whole assembly together is I need to round out these edges. And really any edge in here that I can't hit after the thing's all glued together. Like all of this on the outside I want to do with my angle grinder, and then a finer sandpaper after it's all glued together so it's all uniform. But all this stuff's gonna be kind of hard to hit when it's all glued together. It shouldn't be too bad, but getting up into the top and whatnot, it's just easier to just do right now. Excuse me. So I've got my Dremel. I've got my coarse bit on there to start with, one of those coarse sandpaper pieces. And then I've got a thinner piece that I can go over it with right later. The biggest part's to make sure that the bottom is good. And then you can just do a quick cursory around the other edges. But the main thing here is the bottom edge, and don't take too much off that bottom edge because you still have to hang on it, right? You don't want to really round it off and make it difficult to hang on. Just kind of concave a little bit. If you got a router, like a small portable router, it's even better for this, but I don't have one of those. I've got my Dremel. I do love my Dremel. It's gonna work just fine for this. So I'm gonna do this top piece real quick and we'll go from there. It's not perfect. A router would be a little nicer for that, but I'm not too worried about it. There's also some edges on the inside that you can see here. I'm gonna do all that at once, and it's just gonna be a quick on the inside, just make sure there's no rough pieces. So I'm gonna run down this line. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. That's great. And so I gotta do that for this row and this row. I won't do any of that for the inner rows because those are gonna be sitting flush against this. I don't need to run them off at all. So, alright, I'm gonna run through these two and we'll go from there. Alright, so I've got a little thing of water here for the wood glue. I got my wood glue, some just good old-fashioned Gorilla Glue. I've got a couple of clamps. I've got these bad boys here. I've got my screws. So most of this is screwed together. The backer board is not, and this front piece is not. So I've got a couple of clamps that I need to add as necessary. But the main thing I'll have to clamp is I'll have to clamp this piece to the back, and then I'll probably use these smaller clamps up front, there and there. So, and then add more if needed, but it should be good to go. So, lay this back out. I'm going to start gluing. So I'm not gonna run through the whole process, but I just drill these holes through here because I do want to go ahead and screw this backer board down a little bit, just to keep it clamped there safely and securely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back drill through those holes I just marked and drill through, and I'll wet it down, set it up for gluing, screw it down, and then I don't have to worry about this peeling off a whole lot. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick, and then I'll finish glue up here in a second. So obviously this Gorilla Glue is going to swell out. I'll come back through and clean that off with my Dremel. But everything's really feeling good. I'm really happy with all of that, actually. So I'll come back through. So the last thing after all this is said and done is I'm going to come back through with my angle grinder and clean up these edges, round out these corners, clean up this edge here, and then hang this bad boy. I'll probably drill 2 holes all the way down through here to hang it to a joist, or out here maybe. But so I'm pretty happy with it. All right, sweet. All right, this is all glued up. The glue filled in a lot of the areas that I had wood filler into, so I'm pretty happy with that. I got nice smooth surfaces all the way through, I think, or I will once I sand it. So pretty happy with all that. Undo this monstrosity. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. That's great. Fantastic. All right, get a sander and clean that up a little bit. Get in here and clean up some of this. You can see some of the glue kind of seeping out down in the middle of it, kind of like it has up on top here in the gaps. Try to get that out. I'm also going to try and sand down any ridges I can feel in there. It's like, oh, this is pretty decent. Pretty happy with this, but I can feel some in here, so try to hit that. out these corners right here a little bit. Get all up into here. All right, now I'm big big guns here. I'm gonna clean all this up. This guy, all the way around it, and it might be pretty close then. That's my hangboard. Now I can get a bowl. I can put whatever hold right here I want to. Be it a pair of jugs, be it slopers. Probably gonna do slopers to begin with. I'm not too worried about that because I got all kinds of room on these slots. I give myself plenty of room to grow with this thing. It's totally planned, I'm sure. But that's it. All right, so now it's about how to mount it. There's a couple ways to go about this. You could drill 2 really large holes, probably even bigger than this bit here, up at the top. Get you a size on this thing, if I can. This 7/16 bit, I'd probably go even larger than that. And you could run cord through it and hang it that way, just off of a branch or something. I'm gonna try and screw it directly to some joists. So I measured this out for 36 inches over the top of a doorway. I'm gonna put 2 long pilot holes down through this thing and set it up for these bad boy exterior screws that I've got that are 4 inches long. Yeah, that's great. So I'm gonna put these out on the corners like this, screw that directly into the joists, and hang on it. I'm gonna get a pilot bit for this so I don't crack all that wood I just got all nice, and then get her hung. So there we go. Alright, so you somehow survived all the way through that video. It's kind of a slog, I'm sure, but I appreciate you watching. I hope you learned a couple things. I hope you answered a couple of questions. Pretty happy with how this all turned out. There are a couple things I would like to do different that I wanted to throw that out there for you before you hop into your own board. For starters, I really don't know that I needed as many slots as I did. I also don't know if the widths were, or that the depths were really right. I've got 3 inches up here. Is that right? No, I've got 2 1/4 inches up top. I've got 1.5 inches in the middle, and I've got 1/4 inch on the bottom. Most hangboards go down below 3/4 inch. They'll get narrower than that. So I may end up putting blocks in there or something to bring out the depth a little bit. So it's a little more difficult to hang, but I'm a long ways from that point. As far as my skills, my skills don't actually maximize out this board yet. So that'll be a future development, but that's something to consider for you if you've been climbing longer. The other thing is that obviously my finger widths are horrible. My finger widths are way off. I expected this to be a 2, 3, and a 4, and this is like a 6, and a 5, and a 3. You know, like I can stuff 4 in this one, but it's probably good as a 3, but it's a little bit big. It's not bad, I can use it for 3, but I don't have a 2 or a mono. So what I'll end up doing, I think, is I'm actually going to cut some blocks to drop in the middle of these and convert these to mono and 2 maybe. Depends on how much shoulder extension I'm willing to deal with. But I wish I had measured a little bit better for my fingers and done that template a little bit better for that. I might have used a little bit better plywood, but I mean, this plywood's okay. You can see a couple of spots where it's really chunked out and kind of chipped after the fact, but you know, for what I'm doing hanging in my garage, it's fine. I don't know that I needed quite this size, but those are things to consider. Right now this is unusable, there's no point to it, but if I added monos and doubles to it, then it actually might not be too bad. But I don't know if this board needed to be quite as big as I did. But I mean, it's perfectly functional, really usable. But those are things I would consider a little bit more going into the future. Otherwise, I'm super happy with it. Everything's working great. Hanging in's real comfortable. I'm pretty happy with it. So I really hope that you learned a couple things and that you're able to go out and these. I mean, really, they're easy to make. I made a big, complicated one. You don't have to do anything as big as this. You can do just one. You can do this row right here and 2 blocks and put those blocks wherever you wanted to. You can angle those blocks. You can turn those blocks. You can put those blocks wherever you wanted, and it would work great. So if all you do is learn how to do this process right here, that's awesome, and that's super cheap. That's hardly nothing in materials. You know, that's way. I mean, you're talking probably less than $10 in materials, unless you had to go buy a whole new board of 3/4 inch ply. If you got scrap plywood running around, nothing to it. So hopefully that answers a couple of questions and gives you an idea where to start and what you're looking for when you get into this. And if you got any questions, feel free to comment below and ask for help or show me what you're doing and let me know what's going on. So I appreciate you watching this video, and thanks for being a patron. Appreciate it. Bye.